Hello again to another episode of Positive Talks. This time we're on the road, and this is a Rise4Disability special from Glasgow and Milton Keynes. Sit back, grab a drink, enjoy as we visit Rise4Disability. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. Glad you plugged in your ears. If you like us already, then you know what we're going to say. Hit that button, subscribe, like us, and of course, follow us on social media as well. The links will be appearing below on the screen, alongside on the screen throughout today. But this episode is all about Rise4Disability. Now, you might be wondering who on earth Rise4Disability are and how they came about and what Positive Talks have got to do with it. Well, let me explain a little bit. The wonderful Jade is the brains behind Rise4Disability. You also know her as the wonderful co-host of Positive Talks. So Jade, how did Rise4Disability come about and what really is its aim?
So Rise has been established for 8 or 9 years. The Rise stands for Resource Identifier Solutions and Equipment for Disability. We've readjusted Rise to and from to different formats throughout the years, and this year, because we've previously done events at London Excel that's community focused, as well as, so Rise predominantly has been an OT focused event, but with the nature of not holding a community event in Excel London, we decided to try and merge the two so that it was a community focused and occupational therapy focused event. I think going forward, we still want to try and segregate them again, because although there is different things of them people working together, which is the idea of what we're wanting to do, but when it comes to like learning objectives and stuff, they're very, very different. So trying to promote CPD and things like that to an OT audience, it then loses track with the disability community, and they have different kind of objectives, so they were working within the same field. So I mean, there was good and bad parts of both Milton Keynes and Glasgow, and it was great to speak to an engaged audience, I would say, in particular. And it also gave us a good chance to go around and meet quite a lot of the equipment suppliers and stuff, Mike, didn't it, from Milton Keynes and at Glasgow?
It certainly did. And that's one of the things that struck me about the Rise events, because there are other events out there, very big events, and I'm sure you guys listening to us and watching us will know what those events are. But the difference with Rise is it's actually smaller and it works better being smaller. You get more of a chance to interact. And of course, from an OT perspective, the agenda is very much devised in consultation with the local OT community, which I think you've got some good links there, Jade.
Yeah. Well, I think for next year's approach, we are keeping Rise going, but we're doing 4 Rise events, but it's solely just for occupational therapists and accompanying health professionals, so physio, OTA, speech language therapists, etc. There won't be any community attendance unless they're involved in the content themselves, if that makes sense. So it will be a CPD event purely for OTs, and we'll be working with the local authority. We're calling them equipment review days. So it will be a way that we review equipment and put equipment to the test in workshops and hands-on learning. So that's the approach for next year, just to make sure that the focus definitely meets the learning objectives. And that kind of brings us on to one of the topics we discussed at Scotland, didn't we, around what makes a good CPD session, which me and yourself ran, was talking about CPD accreditation. I don't know if you want to give your perspective on that as well, as an OT, right?
No, it's really interesting because I've actually been called to account by the Healthcare and Professions Council. I had to give evidence of my CPD, and it is extremely nerve-wracking to do. When I first qualified, as I say, I qualified back in 1991, it was sufficient really just to say you turn up, done a course, you had a certificate, but you never actually proved what you learnt from it. So now it's very much a case that you have to prove that you've actually gained something, learnt something, you're changing your practice. The thing is, it's trying to find the right courses and knowing what makes good CPD. if indeed it's a course that you choose to do. So you're right, we had a very lively discussion with members of the Scottish OT community up in Glasgow, and we took some video of it. So I think without further ado, without us rabbiting on about it, Jade, why don't we introduce you, the viewer, to what happened up in Glasgow, and you can hear how the debate went on what makes effective, continuous, professional development. Have a watch, enjoy. So, my name's Mike Cowan-Jones, this
Jade Wallace.
and we are both part of something called the Positive Talks podcast, which is a brand new idea. I'm an occupational therapist by background, but a really frustrated one, because anyone else an OT in this room? Yeah, anyone else? Okay, do you work with occupational therapists? Okay. Do you know what we do? Please tell us then. We're getting nods from the audience. They're saying they know. I've got no idea. Do you know what we do as a profession? See? You're with me, and I completely agree with you, because it's such a wide and varied career. We do all sorts of stuff. You get people working within a specialist field of children. Children itself, is it cognitive? Is it physical? Is it mental health? Good morning. Come on in. Come and have a seat. Fantastic to see you. My name's Mike. This is Jade. Lovely to see you. So we are really quite frustrated at the fact that people don't know what occupational therapy is about, and most occupational therapists don't. So you might be working in older care, younger care, whatever it happens from there. Jade, it has to be said, you are a frustrated occupational therapist because you haven't quite got there yet, have you?
No, I've not had the time.
No, but you've worked with lots of OTs, haven't you? Yeah. So what's your connection with this?
I'm the organiser of the Rise events. My background's been particularly in postural management, equipment provision, moving and handling, etc. Over the years, and trying to support OTs in finding the right products and signposting. So that's kind of how we went into events, and we do these events across the country as well.
Yeah. And the company that I run, Arms Rehab Limited, is all about, not all about, 90% of it is about training within health, disability, education and so on. 10% of it is still a bit of independent OT work. But the thing that got us talking, is when you organise an event like this, when you look at continuing professional development, which we all need to do as OTs to stay registered within Healthcare Professions Council, is how do you know that a course is really good? And when someone goes down the line of saying CPD accredited, what on earth does that mean? How would you get to be CPD accredited? And actually, both from an occupational therapy perspective and also from people who supply the OT community and support the OT community, what makes good courses from your point of view? So that's why we thought we'd open this up as a discussion point here and get your viewpoints and just generate some discussion
Just to mention,
moving
within
forward.
the podcast, the feature of our podcast is hot topics.
It is,
so
yeah.
Every podcast we look at what's a hot topic within the world of disability and occupational therapy and even social care and health, etc. And we have like a featured talk. But we've been thinking more about particular CPD and what makes CPD apparent and correct for health professionals, if that makes sense, because CPD is just a general board and you have it from mechanics to all different types to have something CPD accredited. So we kind of wanted to look into the idea of having like health professional accredited CPD, and that's something we're exploring with doing, isn't it?
Yeah. So from your point of view, if I said to you, you've got a £5 million training budget, how would you prioritise what courses to go on? Any suggestions? What would you be looking for? Would it be, for example, value for money? Would it be the reputation of the training provider? Would it be the course content? How would you rate it? Anyone got any suggestions? Course content, right, okay, course content. Who would agree with that? Let's have a quick show of hands. Yeah, 1, 2, and then a few nods as well. Yeah, okay, so we all agree course content. Okay, that's excellent. What about value for money? How much is that? Of that is a variable for you guys. It's important.
But do you not think, I don't personally think, just from my experience obviously with yourselves, is you don't set the budget, it's more like what's been told. You have to do your own CPD from home, obviously, for credits and that, things like research, going to events and that, a lot of that is free. And then also if there is a budget for training, that would be done by the local authority to then bring in that training. So
it would, but as you correctly say, so much of this is actually down to the individual. And when you look at the Healthcare Professions Council, it's a bit of a debate about who's responsible for doing the training, keeping your CPD up to date. And you'll notice that some local authorities and some trusts are veering less from funding it and more towards saying you've got to do it, and yet you cannot practice unless you've done it. So it's almost like a chicken and egg. So I guess things like the podcast, we hope, fulfills a bit of that need as well, because it is free. And please do subscribe to it, follow us, hit the button, we'd love you to do so. But other events like Rise4Disability, the OT show, various things like that, are also ways of continuing your CPD. And some of the talks there that you get, of course, are free of charge to the OT.
I think if we're going to generalise it, not just to OTs as well, a lot, especially, I know you work within social care, don't you? I spoke to yourself. So what's your role within there? So service managers, if you're looking at like rehab engineers, etc., things like that, a lot of it's around equipment provision as well. So it's bringing that kind of link in between actual education, CPD content and equipment provision. So that's where myself and Mike see that there is a massive gap, because even the Royal College doesn't do like an endorsed accredited training for equipment providers.
No.
They used to, they don't anymore. So it's looking at trying to work with companies like we have here and looking at what the key learning objectives are that health professionals, equipment providers that need to learn from that. So for example, some of the workshops we're doing today, making it impartial, getting the different kinds of equipment in, and then looking at the qualities and why you would prescribe that type of equipment within your role. So that's kind of what we've been talking about.
And again, that's a really good point, because the Royal College of OTs used to do an endorsement process for our courses as well, where you can get them validated and endorsed. And I was part of that process. It was the sort of thing where we'd look at the content, we'd look at whether it's valid in this day and age, is it up-to-date evidence? But that seems to have stopped. We've recently checked on their website, they're not doing it anymore. So where do we fulfil that need? This is a great event because you get to talk to people, you get a lot of time to talk to people and evaluate products. But not every company is as good as some of the ones around here. I have been to other events, and the way some companies sell their product is by telling you how bad their opposition products are, which to me isn't great. We need to know things like function, durability, maintenance costs, as well as the initial cost. Someone who's an OT, for example, yeah, you mentioned cost as well, but what else are you looking for in a course, if you don't mind us asking you? Quality.
It's
right.
not too sales pitchy as well. Do you find that sometimes you get bombarded with companies, and obviously we love the companies, they pay for the event, so I'm not going to say like, oh, we don't want them to, but we want their approach to be a bit more educational and informative rather than, oh, can we come and just do a sales pitch on this product? They're missing the mark of really showcasing the true educational qualities of their products, and I think that's something that we want to try and harness. And myself as well, I've also got lived experience of disability, but also with healthcare professional background. It's about having representation in training as well, and real life case studies. Have you got any thoughts yourself on what you feel makes a good CPD session, or what do you value as, what's your key CPD? That's probably a good key CPD, like throughout a year, like what do you use mainly for your CPD?
I look at the Royal College of Occupational Therapists, so I'm a member there, and I look at the hot topics that are coming up. Yeah. Do you have access to that?
Yep.
Mike,
Yeah.
So personally, for me at the moment, I'm very interested in neurofunctional disorders, and I forget the name of it. Anyway, chronic pain syndrome, because they're very close together, and I often wonder if by giving equipment is supporting the condition. Is it making them more disabled and stay within that disabled role? I just wonder where we are with it. There's lots around at the moment. There's lots of psychologists and psychiatrists and neuro psychiatrists doing lovely podcasts on it. But yeah, I think we need some more help, because there's lots of people who have only just had a diagnosis, but they haven't had any rehabilitation at all.
It's a really good point. And you were talking about quality and about reputation. Now, the Royal College of OTs is our professional body that has got to have a good reputation. You also hear of other organisations that you may well know and trust. But then it's about whether you're filtering out the courses to be relevant. That's the other point you made, isn't it? There's a lot of training out there, but is it always relevant to us and who we are? It's almost like going to social media and scrolling through in the morning and getting bombarded with so much information. And bear in mind, as we're filming this, it's the day of the American elections, and people are talking about what is truth and what is false news, news and false news. Fake news, it's almost like that. Looking at that quality thing and what's contained is another thing that we've looked at. We've both been involved in different ways at looking at other courses being accredited. And one of the things we've noticed is that with certain companies, and we're not going to name them because that'd be unfair, they're not here to come back to them, but certain companies that accredit courses, it's more about the process.
It's you're talking about the accreditation, the people that approve the accreditation. So if they're, like the standard CPD, the purple logo people, we looked into what they actually do to accredit, because obviously CPD is varied across all different types of practices, and not even just health, there's mechanics, everything. And it's like a framework that they follow, which is a general framework, but then we're like, there's nothing specific for CPD for OT, or even health, for example, physio, speech language therapists, etc., looking at what their learning objectives are. Whereas the Royal College used to do the endorsed, approved learning award, but they're not looking at doing that. I approached them to ask about it because I work with clients to try and make their CPD content more tailored for health professionals from a learning objective. So that's what I do on a consultancy level. And over a CPD accreditation, I'd always put forward, oh no, you should go through Royal College because then it's approved for your audience. And they've stopped doing that. So myself and Mike's been looking at trying to create a CPD framework for OTs, and how there can be some kind of directory where we can look at people's training sessions, make sure it meets the learning objectives for OTs, and put it on like a database so that it's a lot more straightforward for CPD. So hence why we wanted to have this discussion today, because it's something we're working on, but it was to try and find out from OTs themselves and other professionals what their key learning objectives are within their field. So that's
effectively it's trying to step into the void that the Royal College of OT seems to have left for whatever reason at the present time, because we're very conscious that when we're looking for CPD, we've got the same values as you. Is it knowledge-based? Is it up to date? Are they a reputable company? Yeah, I'll never forget one company. It's many, many, many years ago, right? And it was way back when, right? It was, I think it was a NAIDEX event. It might not have been. This isn't against NAIDEX. I'm just trying to highlight it was a publicly accepted event, and they're brilliant. Okay, they're good, but there's one particular individual who's talking about back care and manual handling, and the first clue we should have had is that he's wearing a cowboy hat. Right? And there's an old phrase from my generation, if someone's a cowboy, you don't normally trust them. The next thing was that he was standing up doing a talk, and he was holding up the anatomy of the spine, but it was upside down and back to front, and he hadn't noticed. And then the next thing is, he was talking about equipment. I think he was talking about a transfer belt. And for those of you that are into manual handling, you know that transfer belts can have a bit of a psychological input as well. It gives some people reassurance, but there's also a physical need for it. It's about skin integrity and grip and assisting with transfers. And all he went on about, it's to make the individual feel good. And then the final bit, and I admit, let's be clear, your back is supposed to bend, okay? I'm not saying it isn't. But if I'm standing up here and I'm doing a talk on moving and handling, you're not going to catch me doing a lot of this, bending over to pick things up. You'll spot me coming down my right posture for obvious reasons. And he clearly did not, and he kept doing it over and over, and there was no comeback. What was interesting is his company didn't exist the following year, even though that particular year people were queuing to his stand. So what the Royal College of OTs did was brilliant in having their accredited courses. It's absolute genius, but we're worried about the void, and we think there's a gap there that we need to step into and start looking at for us all.
Because of the background I'm in, I'm very knowledgeable on equipment provision, and that's where I've always worked alongside OTs, telling them what's available that they may not know about. I mean, you're very busy people, and to learn about everything that's available, it's pretty much impossible. So it's making sure that there's the right approach on highlighting awareness, and it not being done in a sales pitch way. It's about obviously how well the product works, things like even down to things like servicing and maintenance that you need to look into as well. Ways products can be used for particular clients, so things like that are hot topical, like to do with obviously like you said about chronic pain, certain things like that. But then also I think that companies really need to have representation in that. I don't know whether you find this yourself as well. If you're signposting to a person with a disability, even from my own experience and friends, etc., they'll go to an event or go somewhere online to look for products, and it's always represented as an older population within their branding, and it puts younger people off from buying stuff. So it's trying to get this kind of messaging together so that there's fair representation and there's proof in what they're providing. And
yeah, it's a really good point. If you remember, we had our friend Ria Moore, who was down at one of the previous Rise events, and she did some work with mobility in motion.
Yeah.
Mobility in motion. And she's a wheelchair user, and she was evaluating in real time the way the adapted features of their vehicles work. So we've got a genuine feedback. Laybrook, who are here as well, they actually use, they haven't published it, but they have used lots of case studies now to try and show the validity of their product, when it does work, when it doesn't work. I've been involved in that. So what we're thinking is there's got to be a way forward. But here we go. We've talked about us, we've rabbited on. It's about you. What works for you? What are you looking for your CPD? So you said quality. How do you know something is quality training? How do you assess that, guys? I mean, is it, for example, you're trusting people like the RCOT or other organisations to say, yeah, I've done the proofread and it's okay? Because not every company out there is doing it in quite the same way, is all I'm going to say. I'm not naming names, it'd be unprofessional, they're not here. But they're people I'm actively involved with at the moment in other courses. It's frightened me because I'm having to show them the current evidence. Yeah. Or is it because you hear about voice, you know, people telling you it's a good course, go for it?
Can I just say, well, part of my personal CPD involves me looking at research. So I'm reading up-to-date research, and if I go to training, I'm listening to the training, I'm evaluating that, I'm writing about it as a reflection, and if it's not very good training, it would be reflected in my reflection.
Exactly.
So there's good and bad across the nation.
Yeah.
And we have to take the best of what we can get. But it's having that, I think, being prepared for the Health Professions Council. So that's the other part of my registration.
That's right.
And it's just being prepared for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, quality does count.
Yeah.
But we have to pick out of a training session what matters to us.
Absolutely. And I think you're right, because it should be about personal practice as well, our own reflection.
It's very relevant on depending on what type of role you're in as well, I guess, to keep you up to date within
very much
that.
so. And then, of course, the added factor to that is that HCPC, when they look for your evidence, because I've been through that, I've been one of the OTs called up, it's scary. It was really scary at the time, because you think, well, is this proof or not? But attendance at a course is not in and of its own evidence of CPD, continued professional development. So does the course give you a chance to reflect? Can you change your practice? It's got to be married with our own practice as well, and I think that's really important.
So looking at the companies that are providing the training, and not only from an equipment provision side of it, is it quite important for them to have their own research resources and stuff like that for when is that helpful for you when it comes to that? Or
it could be helpful, it would be helpful, but I don't think it would always be possible.
No, some do, depending if it's a new product and stuff.
Yeah, for research to be robust and valid, it has to go through
universities and things like that. Yeah, some of them have
rigorous, a rigorous path.
Which is difficult, but I suppose
it would be difficult.
Having their own kind of signposting and resources to where they've got the evidence and the information from, having that available post the training session, I suppose it helps you when you're filling in your CPD. Is it like a reflective log or something that you do?
Yeah, it is. So whereas with some professions they have to get so many points and should have had so many points collected over the time, and then they need to have other professionals endorse them, this is professional reflection, and we have to evidence what we're doing. But it can be many and varied. I have used evidence of podcasts that I've listened to show my CPD. as well as attendance at seminars, presentations at things like National Back Exchange.
So if you came to this event, for example, and you put this down, would you then have to do like an analyst log of what you learnt from the day to prove the CPD?
Well, I'll tell
You don't
what I'll
have
do,
to.
see what you guys would do as well, yeah?
Well, you don't have to, but like, so for not everybody does it, and it is a personal account, so you're not showing anybody your work, because it's a bit like a diary.
Yeah.
So you go home and you write a few lines and you evaluate what you've learned.
Yeah.
And would you go back, and how important was that for you? Would it change your practice? You're never showing anybody what you're doing unless you're called up, and that's absolutely fine, and I'm fine with that because it's my personal work.
Yeah.
Yep, that makes
You're
sense.
absolutely right. When you're called up, you need to have that evidence. So the sort of thing that I'll do is, I've attended here. If I came across any new products, I'll do a brief summary because that's good for me to know as well. If I've been to a seminar, it's got me reflecting. It might be I'll reflect and say, I know more than them, ha, 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 which is just as relevant, or I've just learned something new. And this is the point I've learned. And the implication for my practice, it's how it's going to change my practice, that's important. We're at 10:30, we're due to finish round about now. Thank you very, very much for coming along. I know this, I don't know what you expected. I wasn't quite sure when we put this together how it would go, to be honest. But thank you, we really appreciate it. You've got the rest of the day ahead. I was conned by my hotel into being told there's a match here tonight, but apparently there isn't. And that's why they put my prices up last night for my hotel room, but there you go. But it's a beautiful place to be, enjoy yourself. Thank you very much, guys, and do subscribe, do have a listen to the podcast, we'd appreciate it. Take the info with you.
It was quite interesting whilst we was in Scotland speaking to different occupational therapists, because with the nature of the Rise events, usually it's quite contained to that area, but with Scotland, I guess, because they don't have loads of events, we had people from Dundee, Glasgow, Edinburgh, etc. We're going to Stirling University next year, so that we are a more of a mutual area for people to come, so more centralised. So that will be November next year. And whilst we're on the topic of what happened in Scotland, you managed to speak to some equipment suppliers and exhibitors that were there. Was there anyone in particular that you thought, oh, that's a great service or product that they had?
There were some really interesting equipment suppliers up there, and it was interesting to see one particular company, Mobility in Motion, because they'd exhibited at Milton Keynes, and there was a brilliant product they've got there, we'll show you in a bit. But they had a completely different take on things and showed us another adaptation for use in Scotland. Now, for those of you that don't know Mobility in Motion, their idea is basically take a standard vehicle and then adapt it so if you have a physical disability, you can still use it in some way, either as passenger or driver. So completely different to the idea of a wheelchair accessible vehicle. However, as we're going to see in the next clip, it doesn't mean that you can't use a standard car if you happen to be a wheelchair user. So I was intrigued, and outside Hampden Park up in Glasgow, this is what took place. Hi, I'm Mike, as you know, Mike Cowan-Jones from the Positive Talks podcast, and I'm here at Rise4Disability in Glasgow, Hampden Park. And once again, welcome to another visit to Mobility in Motion. You'll remember on our last podcast when we were down in Milton Keynes, they demonstrated a system of hoisting someone in and out of a vehicle, but that's not all that Mobility in Motion do. There's many, many other things as well. And to help talk us through another adaptation, let me introduce you to one of their colleagues up here in Scotland. This is Dave.
Hi there.
Dave, I'm Mike, lovely to meet you.
How you doing, Michael?
Thanks for taking the time out to talk us through this, because I understand you've got an ingenious way for wheelchair users to use a vehicle but not having to bring an extra wheelchair. Is that correct?
That's correct, Michael. So what we've got is what we call the Braun Caroni system. So
Right.
basically it's a wheelchair cum swivel seat for the car. So it's basically designed so you don't have to physically transfer someone from a wheelchair into the car seat. So
Brilliant. I mean, one of the things I'm often getting challenged about as a moving and handling advisor, manual handling trainer, is car transfers. And they're so difficult to do, even with the best of intentions.
Yeah.
So this is going to make it so much easier.
Yeah, and it's so simple to use as well. So
Simple enough for me to use?
Definitely, definitely.
I'm going to put you to the test. Show us how it works then, Dave.
Okay. So what we've got also, like any other sort of swivel seat installation, we remove the original seat from the car. We then replace it with, obviously, the swivel seat, as you can see.
And am I right in thinking the swivel seat in and of itself can be used without a wheelchair device, and it can be used for driver's side as well as passengers?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, got you.
But obviously vehicle dependent, we also need to check vehicles out what's suitable for driver's side, because you also got the steering wheel, which could pose an issue for the seat to turn.
Good
but
point.
Yeah, we can do them in certain vehicles.
I hadn't even thought of that. Good point. Well
Okay.
done.
So once we've also got the swivel seat installed, you can either get them manually operated, but the Keynes system in today's car is all fully electric.
Right.
So it's with the push of a button, very simple, the whole seat would then turn and then come out of the car. Okay, so all you simply do to get the car out, or to get the seat out of the car, sorry, is hold the button to the left.
Oh wow, look at that.
And as you can see, the seat starts to manoeuvre itself out.
And of course, we know from previous podcasts that post to the left as we look at it wouldn't be there. That's the one for the hoist to be fitted.
The muffler pair, yeah.
So that wouldn't be there. That wouldn't
be there.
obstruct legroom at all.
Okay, so once the seat gets to its position facing out, with the Keynes system on this model, it then pushes out over the sill, and then it can lower down to where you need it to meet the base of the wheelchair, which I'll show you in a little second.
Okay.
The Keynes system comes with two armrests. It comes with footrests as well, which will be on the wheels part of the system.
Yep.
And then on the back of the seat, when you've got the chair out, you can take the handles out and then use it as a manual push chair. Okay, so once you've got the height roughly where you think the seat should be, this is all magnetic, so you can just leave that there for
well, that's easy.
ease of use.
Can imagine that getting lost otherwise.
You've then got the wheels of the Keynes system.
Yep.
So all you're simply doing is lining up this point here
Right.
with the two notches on either side here.
Right, so on this chair there's two notches at the front and they can line up with the
Yes.
rear part of the frame.
And all you simply do is lift the little levers at the end, and then
Oh, okay.
also, look at that, as if magic, it's lined up perfectly.
Ah, right.
Okay, so all you simply do is release the catch to take it off, and then slide it on.
Okay, so here's the challenge. Can I do it? You said even I can do this.
You can, have a go.
Let's have a find out. Okay, so come on down. So there's two catches at the front of the chassis, for want of a better description of the frame. Oh,
And just pull them up a bit.
pull up. Ah! Well, that was easy. And then getting it back in, I pull them up again.
Yeah, just open it up and then click them in position. That's it.
And they're really secure. I mean, are these load tested or tested for safe working?
Yeah,
loading,
they're all
like that?
crash tested, yes.
Crash
They're all
tested,
crash
that was the
tested,
thing,
yep.
crash
They're all
tested.
crash tested.
And do they take a weight limit as well? There must be maximum weight.
There is sort of weight limits on them. They're different seat options, but they'll roughly run about 20 stone, 23 stone maximum.
Okay.
But there's different variations on certain seats.
Okay. Now, of course, there's one thing you've probably noticed looking at it on YouTube, and if you haven't noticed it, you will now. The seat is considerably further back than the frame.
Yeah.
So how do we make the two connect? How does that
So
work?
what you then do, with
Yep.
the person sitting on the seat, you've got a little lever here.
Right.
You just push that lever down, and then you simply slide the seat forward until it clicks into position. And that's it.
So
Transferred over.
effectively, the seat is on tracks, and you're just. It's almost like a train going from track to track in a way. Is that right?
Yeah, as simple as that, yeah. So very simple manoeuvre, push down, and then the seat slides back. Okay.
Wow.
Now the seat, when you're pulling it forward, it's not going to come straight off because it's got the little stoppers in here.
So there's safety stoppers at the
Yes.
front.
So
right?
once the seat gets to that point, then it can't go forward any further.
So not only is it idiot proof, it's mic proof as well.
It
I
is.
can't get it wrong.
You can't get it wrong.
Yeah.
Once you've got the seat transferred to the wheels, you just simply release it with the catch again and then take it off the base.
Okay. So the one thing I will comment on is I wouldn't expect this to be used for massive distance anywhere, because I'm trying to work out where the attendant actually grips.
Okay, so what you've got on the back of the seat, Michael, is
I should guess there's something else coming.
yeah, little latch here, pull that down. And then inside here you've got your handles.
Gosh, I'm getting so excited as an occupational therapist here. I can't believe it.
So you then take the handles off the little latch here, and then they'll click into position on the frame, and then it becomes your handles to push.
And it's a lever brake system.
Lever brake system on the right handle, and you've also got the brake system down on the bottom here as well.
Okay, so the lever brake, can you lock it with this, or is this merely as a way of slowing it down, for example, if you're descending
You can
along
simply
a
lock it.
hill?
Yeah, so just pull the lever up and then get the catch into the notch here, and that'll put
So it's all compact, it's all together?
It is, yep. I'll just try to get it back up into its position there. And then obviously the headrest can then adjust as well.
Perfect. In fact, I can just see me think about many people I work with who'd really benefit from this. So at the moment, they're in wheelchair accessible vehicles, in their wheelchair all the time. Some need it, they need additional postural support.
Yeah.
I presume, I might be wrong, but I presume you can't put things like lateral supports and pommels and things like that.
Yeah, you certainly can. You can.
No way.
Yeah. The seat can come with various adaptations for you.
What can I say? What can I say?
So it can come with like sort of harnesses, lap belts, you know, waist, different sort of belts. You can have sort of cushions on the side for posture support, thigh support. There's various different options for comforting the seat out to your own specification.
Now, to me, that's really significant, because if you think about it, and I know everyone's got preferences, I'm not trying to get away from that, but when you're in the back, you're often isolated from what else is going on, yeah? When you're in the front, you're part of it. And I hate to say it, but when you look at the crash testing that happens, you think about the airbags and all the rest of it, it's mainly designed around the main front passenger window, isn't it? It depends on the NCAP rating of the vehicle. So I can see a lot of benefits for this.
It also is, as you say, it is communication for the driver and the person in the chair, so they're not stuck in the back of the vehicle. So they're up front, they can communicate better. They feel part of the actual drive in the car instead of being, you know, in the back, you know.
Really good point.
It does.
So I guess my next question is, how do people get this? Because if you talk to a lot of OTs, and I know some of you specialise in vehicle adaptations and so on, of course you do, but for a lot of us we won't know about how to get hold of this or how to get assessed. What's the process? What do you do in Mobility in Motion?
So basically, if anybody's onto the Mobility in Motion website, they can either do an inquiry on there, or they can call the number which is on the website as well, which will then put you through to one of our call handlers, who will then book out an assessor to come to your house or your place of work.
Yeah.
We'll be able to do a demonstration of the Corona system plus all the other adaptations that we do.
Okay.
And then we can then talk you through the process after that of how to go about placing orders and
how much does the assessment cost?
The assessment's free, there's no charge for the assessment.
They always say if it's too good to be true, it probably is, but I don't get the feeling here. We've met these guys before, we know it's a good product, they're good company, wide range of stuff you do. I'm learning more every time.
Yeah.
Would this or could this be funded by Motability? And if so, are you guys able to help with the claim, for want of a better phrase?
Yes, certainly can. So Motability pay so much towards the cost of it. Other situations, the Motability grants or the foundation can pay the remaining balance for you if you qualify. So we can help with the process of filling out the paperwork and the costs involved, and do it that way. Also, there's some charities that may help towards some of the costs for you, depending on their ailments or what condition they have. So,
and you guys will help facilitate that and guide people the right way.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So I guess the only thing I can say to now is I think it's time I road tested it. Are the brakes on for the transfer? Yes. In which case, Dave, drive me to the next venue, please.
Okay, and we're off.
Thanks for that, Mike. Was it cold outside at Hampden Park?
Not as cold as you might think, actually, but let's just say that no matter how cold it was, we had a really warm welcome from the residents of Scotland. So thank you very much.
It was. It's really interesting to see all the individual adaptations that they've got. I know in the video we did at Ken, I was even looking for. You start looking at things yourself. So with my condition that I've got, my joint condition, I can't drive long distances anymore, and even some really small, like minor adaptations, like the steering ball and the way that you can replace the pedals and stuff like that. It's just, I think it's so important to people know that them kind of adaptations. They're not overly expensive as well, that they exist, and it can allow you to drive longer distances as well. I know we're going
the amazing thing about Mobility in Motion is it's not just the assessment service. They will guide the user of the vehicle through all the funding routes as well, which I think is amazing. But more about them later, because there's also something from Milton Keynes that we're going to feature.
Yeah. So we're going to do our BookBeat feature, but live. So I know we've done BookBeat previously. From a company called Mou Mou Friends. Sarah Montaz is the author, and I've met with her virtually a few times, and she's based a whole series of books on the basis of her daughter as the leading character. And Mike had the privilege of doing an interview about her series of books. So enjoy.
Yes, welcome to BookBeats, and we are again coming from Rise4Disability over at Milton Keynes. Now this is quite unusual because often Jade or myself will read a book first and then just review it, but we've got a bonus here. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but disability is becoming a lot more mainstream, and so it should. Look at the sort of dolls you see around, things like Barbie. But has anyone actually done anything about the written field and books? Well, it just so happens they have. This is Sarah, who is of a WAB, which is, of course,
We All Belong.
And what you've done, Sarah, is actually taken the mantle and you have written not just one book, but a series of books about this brilliant central character who is herself disabled. Tell us more. Tell us more about the character.
Would love to. Hi, everyone. So as you mentioned, I've created the first children's character and brand with a disability, and it's called Mou Mou Friends, and Mou Mou is actually based on my daughter Amani.
Right.
So she has Down syndrome and complex needs. She was born with heart failure, so she's also had several heart surgeries. And what I wanted to do was transform children's entertainment in general, and wanted to try and break into the mainstream children's entertainment industry. And I thought, what better way of doing that than by creating a children's brand? So Mou Mou Friends, there's three main characters. Mou Mou, who's Amani, my daughter, that's actually her nickname. And then you've got Harvey, who's a supersonic puppy, and Enzo, who is a magical cat. And they're all actual real beings. So Harvey is the puppy of a friend of mine.
So these are the people on the front of the book, isn't
They are, absolutely.
Right.
Enzo is actually my brother and sister-in-law's cat, and they've all got magical superpowers. And as you can see, if I can just show you something else as well. So because Mou Mou's got Down syndrome, we celebrate that, and she wears the yellow and blue Down syndrome ribbon in her hair and also in her shoelaces. And she also wears a WAB We All Belong t-shirt, because that's the message that we try to promote. And in each story, you'll meet a different character with a different disability, and basically they all have lots of fun and adventure together. And what I'm hoping to do is to translate the stories into a cartoon series and also release consumer products and basically compete with all the major children's brands out there. Peppa Pig, Paw Patrol, I know it's a very big feat, but that's my aim to get up there. And it's a brand for all children. It's not designed for children with disabilities, it's designed for all children.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. I want to talk some more about that, if that's okay.
Please.
But I'd just like to get a little bit behind the story, a bit more towards you and the family.
Okay.
So what was it that got you thinking, this is something I've got to do? What was it that was that, if you like, aha moment?
The aha moment, the light bulb moment.
The light bulb moment, yeah.
So when Amani was born, she was born with severe heart failure. And she had a very difficult time feeding, breathing generally, and she couldn't have an operation until she was a certain weight. And it was actually just literally around the COVID time. So it was a very, very difficult time for me and my family, very isolated. Even when she went in for her operation, I remember it was a 6.5 hour operation, and I was in this waiting room, literally nobody was there, and there was a screen that was telling me what was happening in the operation. And even after the operation, we couldn't be with her for 5 days because she had to go into ICU.
My gosh, and, as a parent, many of you were able to relate to this as well. That must be incredibly difficult.
Very difficult. We only had like a 5-10 minute video call with her, and she was, under a lot of drugs and sedated a lot of the time. So we just were able to see her. And throughout that time, the experiences that I had with her, when I would go to hospital appointments, when I would go for her intervention, we were treated very differently in comparison to others, because I've got an older child who's typically developing. Well, she's an adult now. And it was a completely different experience. So the way people would look at us, so with Amani, her disability is very visible. The reactions we would get from people, and also children not knowing that they can approach us. And I remember one time we were in a place, and a little girl was looking at Amani and kind of wanted to come and like ask questions, and then her mum was saying, no, don't do that, don't look, it's rude. And then I went over to the mother and I said, it's okay, when you say to a child, don't do that, don't stare, it's rude, what you're actually telling them is don't engage. Children are curious, they have questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I thought that, how can we change mindsets and concepts moving forward? And the best way to do that is through children, because children learn through behaviour.
Yes.
So I thought, if I can target young children, expose them to all different types of people, disabilities, different races, different colours, nationalities, religions, whatever it is, give them that exposure, it basically normalises every day, and it's a natural part of life. And that's what brought me to do it. It was our own sort of experiences.
So very much your personal experience
Absolutely.
Driving you to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a way that many people do. They find their motivation from personal experience. I'm just curious about one thing, because we have a lot of occupational therapists that follow us on this. You said about hospital staff treating you differently as well. And that surprises me, because I thought amongst hospital staff, they'd be more aware.
I'll give you an example. I don't think it's intentional. I remember one time a doctor and a consultant actually said, oh, so this is the little girl who suffers with Down syndrome. And I had to correct them and say, yeah, she has Down syndrome, but she doesn't suffer with it. And I think I think language is very important. I do think it's unintentional, but I also think that people need to be educated and corrected. And concepts like Mou Mou Friends do that. And one of the sort of biggest achievements for me is that typically developing children love our brand and they love our stories, and they look at Mou Mou as a role model. So, it's a complete flip. So imagine a child looks at another child who's actually got a disability, or in my daughter's case, several, and that's their role model.
I think that's brilliant, because again, we've interviewed a few people on the podcast. There were people like Anthony, who was on the very first episode. We know about Isaac Harvey, of course. And the big thing that is different compared to some is just what you said there. It's the fact that their families have said, you're you regardless, not the syndrome, the disability, or whatever it happens to be, and you are going to get on with life.
Absolutely.
And that's basically what you're doing. You're saying, let's put these, anybody, whoever they are, mainstream.
Absolutely.
So how does your daughter feel? Is your daughter aware? I mean, you have, I hope, told her she's in the book.
We've got some wonderful photos with her embracing the book. She's aware of it. She sees the book trailer on TV. I don't think she understands the depth of what we're trying to do. But we recently had a pop-up shop at Peter Jones in Sloane Square. We were there for a week. So she came along. She was actually the star of the show. She came all whacked out with her little outfit on, and all the kids and the parents and families were really interested to meet her. But yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of visits to schools. I've done assemblies at schools. I've talked to many children about Down syndrome specifically, because October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month. So this month I've been very, very busy. And the interesting thing is that they can all relate to it somehow. So somebody might know somebody who may be autistic, might have ADHD, might have cerebral palsy, whatever the disability is. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can relate to that. And the ones that don't relate to the different types of characters. So for example, Harvey is an extrovert. He's a supersonic puppy. He's very fast.
Wow.
He flashes around. He's very outgoing.
Yeah.
He's very sociable. He likes to meet people, and children can relate to that, the ones with similar characteristics. And Enzo's the complete opposite. So Enzo's an introvert. He's a house cat. He doesn't like to go out. He doesn't like to meet people. He likes to read. He likes to do like science experiments, and he's very into helping Mou Mou with her homework. And he will appeal to children who are more introvert in terms of their personality. So something.
And you were saying that throughout the books, the main character meets lots of other different people, or who have maybe different conditions, different experiences of life.
That's right.
How did you find out what, for example, the child who's autistic, how did you find out what their life was like to make it real in the book?
So obviously with autism, it's a very wide spectrum. I know families that have children that are autistic. I had focus groups for each of my stories, right. Met with different types of families, met with children. I spoke to, professional speech and language therapists, occupational therapists. I mean, because obviously I'm in that environment anyway, I have access to it. And before I publish any of the books, before I finalize any of it, I always have these focus groups, and I take the feedback from the focus groups to basically polish up what we genuinely have. So I've done that so book 2, for example, features a character with cerebral palsy. Very interesting feedback on that. And to be fair, I myself didn't really know much about cerebral palsy. And the biggest takeaway we had from that was families coming and saying, we didn't know how to explain it to our children. So they'd be reading the story, and then it would say Eva, who's got cerebral palsy, and they'd say, what's that? No, actually, I don't know how to explain that. So it gives them an opportunity to actually go and research it and find out more about it. So that was great. And then the reason I'd done episode 3 on an aeroplane is because I know many families that have children that particularly are autistic struggle on an aeroplane in terms of the environment, just purely because of other people's perception, thinking that their children are naughty, they're misbehaving. And that's why I wanted to take that and basically turn it into an adventure.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. This idea about aircraft travel, we know that there's lots of challenges with travel. In fact, it's one of the things that Rise4Disabilities is looking as a campaign as well. But it's not just about the physical needs, you're quite right. There's the sensory needs as well, and accommodating that. So it's brilliant you've done it. And I'm really impressed that you've actually gone out and listened to other people and got focus groups. So the characters are real in that sense. But you said one thing that absolutely intrigued me, and I'd love to expand on that a bit more. You said about parents and families getting involved. Now, these books, I think, are aimed at primary school children and reception of up to primary school. Yeah, that's
stage 1, yeah.
Right. But of course, a lot of reading is done not on their own, but with families. So was that ever your intention, or is it a happy accident that it's going to engage the whole family in?
It was definitely my intention. And what I've done is, not that I'm probably at a stage where I can compare myself to Disney, but just to give you an example, Disney films are family films, and there are some parts of the film that are focused directly at adults, like some of the lines, as you probably know.
Yeah.
So there's some things that I say in the book that the children won't get. And I make a point to say that, do you know what this means? Or do you know who this person is? And if you don't, ask a grown up. And it's to get them to engage, because I know they're going to be reading with each other. I also use some vocabulary that's a little bit more advanced in some parts of the book, because I want the child to say, what does that mean? So that the parent is then engaging. So I've been very specific in how I want that interaction to take place.
I think that's absolutely brilliant, which really leads me on to starting to think what happens next, because I have had a look at these books already. I've taken them away. We've got our family reading them now, which is brilliant. And they are very engaging. They're brilliant. They're really well written. I'm not saying that just because you're here, but they are very well written. But you said about becoming more of a brand and into movies and so on.
Yeah. So
a couple of questions for you, just because I'm curious. How did you go about publishing a book in the first place?
Yeah, good question. It was just, it's just so bizarre how it happened. My background is very boring, very corporate, and I'm, very business. And the way this came about is it's almost like it was a calling. This is my purpose, if you like. Mm-hmm. And I just had the idea, I researched it, how do I go about this? And then there was a route to self-publishing, and I explored that some more. And then when I wanted to basically get the animation done, I used a professional company. And the way that they created these characters is by using an actual photograph of the being, if you like.
I don't know how well you can see that.
So a real picture of Amani, a real picture of Enzo, a real picture of Harvey, and then they've used like an AI technology to create them into a cartoon character looking thing.
So you've got these ideas as well. Yeah.
And I just wrote the stories. And each book takes a while. It takes between 3 or 4 months. So I write all the stories. And I edit all the stories. I then get them proofread just to make sure that the grammar is correct and the punctuality is correct. And then we do storyboarding. So then we look at what kind of illustrations will match different parts of the book, and that takes a long time. But I'm very specific in terms of having a very diverse range of characters. So even the key characters, you'll see that they're, different types of people, but also the characters in the background as well. So that takes a while, and then we just put it all together, and off we go. And my books are available at over 39,000 online retailers. So obviously, your Amazons, Waterstones, Foyles, Barnes
I didn't know there
Noble.
were 39,000
exactly.
online retailers.
All the big brands in the US like Target, all of those kind of brands.
Wow.
We're available there. And obviously on our own website as well.
So for those of you that are parents, for those of you that are working in the children's field, paediatric therapists, etc., get hold of it, look for it and get hold. But watch out for something else, because Sarah, you were saying you want this to progress further. You referenced things like Peppa Pig and so on, and movies and greater animation. So what next? What are you going to do next?
So I am literally a one-man show. Like literally, I do everything alone. And that's probably the reason why it's taken very, very long for me to get to where I need to go. But now that I have a lot more time, because I'm obviously a full-time carer for my daughter as well. So she just recently started reception. She's at school, which is great. I really want to focus on translating the stories into an animated series, and then looking for investment opportunities where I can really push the brand out. And basically release consumer products. See, the thing is, what I've realised, just talking to people and people that are already involved with what we do, they absolutely love it. So the people that know about it really, really enjoy the stories and they like the concept. And I literally, I'd say at least twice a week, get messages on Instagram or email, when the new story's coming out. Our kids want to read the new stories.
Right.
And that's not just in the UK, it's all over the world, which is fantastic. And I just have the time now where I can focus on how we can develop this to the next level, get the stories translated into animated series, and then hopefully release some consumer products. But those things require investment, so I'm looking for those investment opportunities.
Yes, because it's investment of time, but also the money, isn't it? And having the contacts to promote
contacts, and the best way that we can do that is by growing the community. So the more people that we have supporting the WAB movement, as I call it, the easier it is to basically reach out and get those opportunities.
We all belong.
We all belong.
We
That's
all
what it
belong.
stands for, yeah.
Maybe there'll be a few T-shirts for sale at some point. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a website that people can go to look at this themselves? Right.
Yes. So the Mou Mou Friends website, it's moumouandfriends.co.uk.
So how? It'll be up on the screen below. But for those of you that are listening rather than watching, that'll be
www.moumouandfriends.co.uk. I've never spelled it out before like that.
Yeah, well, you just wait.
Yeah.
When your daughter's doing phonics at school, you'll be doing all this stuff, I promise you, yeah? So again, it's across the screen, it's www.moumouandfriends.co.uk, and you can find out more information. I guess all there is to say to you now is it's been a real pleasure talking. It's great to meet a proper author, which is fantastic. But I've one more question before we go. One more question. Where do you find the time to write them if you're a carer and mom? I don't understand. So how do you make that time? How do you make that time?
I'm really glad you asked me. So when I first started, My daughter was going to nursery in the afternoons for about 2.5 hours. And what I used to do, I used to drop her off to nursery and I'd go and sit in one of the offices and I'd just do all my work for 2.5 hours. And then when we'd go home, you know, after she went to bed, I'd carry on. So I just fit it in wherever I could. And I'm really glad that I done that, because that's where we are today. But now that I've got more time, you know, the sky's the limit basically. So I've got more time to do a lot more. But I just believe that if you genuinely want to make a difference, particularly in our community, and when I say community, I'm not referring to the disabled community, I'm talking about children in general. When you put the time in, it makes such a difference. And I can see that, you know, the feedback that I get, the responses that I have, it's absolutely been worth it, and I'll do it all over again.
That's fantastic. Oh, I'll need you to promise one thing, right? Which is, as the brand progresses, as you get into movie realms, will you invite Positive Talks to Hollywood to do the interview with you there?
100%. 100%.
Fantastic.
Love that.
So you've heard that, it's recorded, we've got it, and we're with you on your journey.
We're actually, episode 5 is actually in Hollywood. So episode 4, they have an adventure in Dubai. Episode 5, they go to Hollywood. Episode 6, they go to Japan, because I take them around the world. So children learn about different parts of the world and different cultures as well.
My holiday's in Skegness. I think I want to go Mou Mou and go on some more adventures.
Good idea.
Sarah, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming in. This is why Rise4Disability events are so great. You never know who you're going to bump into when. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us on Positive Talk.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really fascinating, because you can take a book and you can read it, but when you actually hear the real life inspiration behind it and talk to the author, blew me away. And I'm sure there's many other people. In fact, I know there's many other people doing similar things. So hopefully we'll review some more. If you've got books that you think we should review, by the way, guys, let us know. Message us, contact us on the socials. There should be the information available on the screen. Hopefully you're enjoying what you're hearing right now, but you know what? If you're not, tell us that as well. This is all about you. So contact us. And of course, if you like us, hit the button, subscribe, spread the news. The more people who get in the Positive Talks community, the better it's going to be long term. Now, of course, we're talking about using social media to communicate with, and you will know that increasingly in 2024, communication's been done online. Maybe it's been done virtually, maybe virtual assistants. But what happens if you've got communication difficulties and it's not easy to communicate online? What happens perhaps if you're visually impaired and it's not easy to see what you need to see? Well, we've got news for you. When we was down at Milton Keynes at the Rise4Disability event there, we ran into some old friends of the show, Simon O'Gorman and Adapt IT. And Jade, you might be interested in seeing this, because I was blown away. There's an application called VOICEITT, and this is what VOICEITT is about and how it works. Right, so at long last, we made it to the end of Rise4Disability at Milton Keynes, and here is Simon O'Gorman of Adapt IT. You remember we've met before on a previous podcast. Now, what's really important is you've been here demonstrating some new software, I believe, called VOICEITT.
Yes, that's correct.
I didn't get a chance to make it to the seminar that was being run.
Yep.
Perhaps you could talk us through what this is about and how it benefits people.
Yeah, absolutely. So VOICEITT is a technology specifically for people with non-standard speech. So up until now, you had your standard speech systems. So you had things like Nuanced Dragon, your Siris, your Echoes, your Amazons, where as long as you've got standard speech, you can use it.
Yep.
As soon as you went past that, normally you would go into the non-verbal zone. So you'd have your AACs, your alternative augmented communication.
Right.
Or you'd have boards that you'd point to the words on, or you'd have buttons that would repeat, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty.
Okay.
VOICEITT fills the gap in the middle.
Okay, so how does it work then? How do you make it work?
Well, as with everything nowadays, it's all artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that great geeky stuff.
Okay.
But basically what this does is it learns from the person that's talking, They use their standard way of speaking. So for instance, if you've got a person with cerebral palsy that's got dysarthria,
Right.
they've got a very distinct way of talking.
Right.
It can take their way of talking and actually map that against words. So whether they can be understood some of the time or none of the time, the computer system in the back is able to interpret for them.
Okay, so can this be used in live time, real time? So if you've got a telephone call, something
It's
like
all
that.
in real time. It's all in real time.
So there's no need to go down a text phone route then and do that?
Nope. No, absolutely not.
Can you give us an example, Simon, of how
Yeah,
this would work?
absolutely. Now, obviously, I'm a bad example because I've got standard speech. But the
You're
premise
Bristolian,
and
I'm a
Bristolian.
Brummie, we've got problems with
We've
speech.
got problems with speech, it's very true.
For anyone who's from Birmingham or Bristol, I do apologise.
So from the record perspective, and it's worth just showing this, in order to train the system, a person has to say about 200 phrases. Now,
Simon, we haven't got time for 200 phrases. They're trying to strike the show.
I'll tell you what,
Right?
I've done 217.
Brilliant.
We're good.
Okay.
But this is what they need to do. So they would say highly recommended in their way of speaking,
Okay.
and they would do that for multiple things. Once they've done that, it works exactly the same way as any other voice dictation software. So they would click to speak.
Okay, so we've got our laptop, we've got the system set up, we've got click to speak on the screen.
Yep. And as you can see, as you speak or as I speak, it goes straight onto the screen.
Well, that's amazing, because I'm just thinking about some of the common applications you have, things like Siri, for example, or Alexa. You can't activate that if your speech is slurred.
No, you can't. And you can use this to do it for you. So once it stops listening, it then reads it out to you. So from a normal person's perspective, say you want to work in a social environment or something like that,
Right.
they just talk. And when anybody sees the point that they haven't quite caught something, they're then able to look at the words. Or if they're in a shop ordering bread or something like that, they can say what they want and it will talk it out to that person.
So how does it work by being so portable? Because I'm not going to carry a laptop around
No,
all
you're
the
not.
time, am I?
So it'll work on any device that has a web browser. So if you've got a mobile phone, whether that's Apple or Android or Google, it will work on that. The only limitation to it at the moment is because of the processing power that's needed in order to do the conversion, you have to be online to use it.
What about personal security then? Because there's a lot of fear, isn't there,
Yep.
that there's devices listening in
Yep.
and that could then breach security, your own security
Yep.
settings.
So from a security perspective, nobody can access the voices or the recordings or anything like that. So even if somebody was to get into your account here, there's nothing they can do about it.
Oh, okay.
All it happen is they'll just talk it, capture their words.
Okay.
The only people that can access the voices are the speech and language therapists that are medically trained to be able to analyze the voices if there's a problem. So for instance, if somebody's using the system and it's not quite accurate, they can do some tweaking in the background for their voice type and for their particular challenges.
Okay, so the big question is, if an OT, an occupational therapist, or anyone else watching this feels it could be a benefit,
Yes.
how do they get hold of them?
Please contact us. You can contact us on support@adapt-it.co.uk.
Right?
The system is fully supported. We will work with you to do the training with the user. We will set up the account and we will make sure that the system is fit for you before you then go onto the subscription model.
Okay, and as I understand it, this is very much innovative technology, but
Yes,
it's
it is.
only available through yourselves. Is that
That's
right?
correct. At the moment, that's correct.
Okay, so you've heard it here first. It's been displayed at Rise4Disability. Great piece of kit. Occupational therapists, spread the word. If you're in the neurodiverse community, spread the word. If you're in the disabled community, spread the word. The details on the screen. And I've got to say that from Rise4Disability, Milton Keynes, thank you very much. Simon, absolute pleasure to
Thanks
catch
very
up with you
much,
again.
Mike. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
When we look at different exhibitors that we have at the events, you can quite clearly see that they serve their purposes for different audiences and different kind of target audiences, if that makes sense. So some exhibitors are particularly set up for occupational therapists, and they only assess and sell through occupational therapists. And then you've got other people that are more community driven. So like Adapt IT do a bit of both, don't they? Do a lot around access to work assessments and that kind of placement side of it, which I'm going to get a beam up on it again and talk about how occupational therapy need to be involved in the access to work assessment, because they used to, and people used to be able to get correct products, and this just seems to have disappeared. So we need to do a whole episode around access to work and the importance of occupational therapy in this. But Adapt IT also do obviously the gaming, accessible gaming consoles and adaptations for that. So that is very much a community kind of driven product. And that being said, I've mentioned obviously our plans for next year, going to do the OT focused events at Rise. So where does that leave the disability community? Well, we have an exciting new approach on this. We are working with a major shopping centre, Centre MK, where we will be doing a disability-led event on the 13th and 14th of June inside Centre MK. So it actually brings retail and disability together, which is a really unique opportunity, because usually disability-led events are within a closed environment, exhibition, and somebody that's either within the disability community or working for will be then find that event and attend it. But us holding an event within a shopping centre, it allows us to raise awareness to the non-disabled community, to advise and raise awareness of as well. And we're doing that through different topics. One of them in particular we're going to do is adapted fashion, and we'll be doing this with some of the major department stores. They've already expressed an interest to be involved in, but looking at inclusive fashion from a point of representation with models, and also about adaptations and adapted fashion. And that kind of brings me back onto the topic of a company we saw that did this amazingly, and it also brings occupational therapy in as well, as it was a company called Jean Sparkles. It's two sisters that design and adaptate ball gown dresses for proms, formal wear, etc. They also do children's fancy dress costumes and a range of other stuff. So your non-standard adapted fashion, and I think that's something that is progressing over time. To disabled people want to wear fashionable clothes. I think as an occupational therapist, you think of adapted fashion, you think of not maybe aesthetically pleasing looking garments, I guess, maybe more your aging population to help with dressing aids and that kind of side of it. But adapted fashion is becoming so much more advanced, and it's even down to things like materials, fastenings, and there's a lot of clothing ranges already in shops that are adapted in some, well, would be considered adapted or easier accessible fashionable wear, and they don't even realise it is. And I think from obviously meeting Jean Sparkles, they won the show for me. Like we let them have a bit more space than they had initially booked, but they had all their beautiful dresses out, and hearing their backstory, it's just amazing. And I really hope, and I'm sure they are going to be involved in the fashion show at Centre MK next year as well. So
yeah, they were remarkable, Jade, and I had the opportunity to meet with the sisters, one of whom is very humble indeed, let him come onto the screen. But there's a really interesting backstory to it, which we'll show on a future podcast. Plus, we know individuals ourselves who've gone around and purchased their products for future events. It was brilliant work, really good stuff.
It was good, and we'll get them on, and we'll do like a whole section around adapted fashion.
Yeah, it really inspirational. I mean, you were up there for obviously been involved with all the events. I mean, are there any other products or manufacturers or organisations that really caught your eye, Jade?
There's loads out there, and I think that sometimes it's really small. Like I know we're going to talk about another event now. Most recent one we've been to, the OT show. Is there anything that you saw around there that you thought, wow, I didn't know that existed? There's something that's already on the Christmas list that I saw. So go ahead.
Now I have to say I didn't really get a chance to wander around the OT show because I was busy supporting a company.
I was as well. This was literally like a 10-minute walk to the loo, and something caught my eye because it was sparkly. I was like, oh, what's that sort of thing? So
I should have guessed because it was sparkly. It caught your eye. Okay, so what caught your eye, Jade?
Very, very simple concept. It is I don't even know the name of the company to reference it, but it's a shower head where you put your shower gel inside the shower head so you can hands-free wash.
Actually, you say that there was something that caught my eye, and again, it's back to clothing. It was having clothing that's easily adaptable, but from an underwear point of view as well. We
Saw
often
them as
think
well.
about the aesthetics outerwear, but there is a need for underwear too. I'll tell you what I did find amazing. This is at the Rise events, which you don't necessarily get at other events. And that's the smaller local charities and support groups that are there. When I was in Milton Keynes at the Rise event there was a brilliant group which is supporting children with special educational needs and disabilities. And they produced a brilliant handbook. It was a really thick handbook, and they very kindly gave, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but they sourced a copy for me as a reference, and it's brilliant. And I wish that every local authority had this book available to talk parents through the statutory services that are available and how to challenge services as well. Really, really good book. It was good to see things like that going on.
Yeah, that's I've the charities and stuff that's there in that area at Milton Keynes. There was a really good sense of like community feel with the amount that was there. And did you see the blind braider as well? She's did she braid your daughter's hair, didn't she?
She certainly did. The blind braider. I mean, her background is that she was not born blind. Her blindness has come on over time. But her whole purpose is to say, just because, from her point of view, you're blind, doesn't mean you can't do things. She's a mother, and I say that because she does it brilliantly well. That's what I'm getting at. She doesn't stop her physical disability getting in the way. And she also, this was amazing, despite the fact she was showing off her braiding skills, she was raising money for the Guide Dogs Association. And what I found out about the Guide Dogs Association through her is it's not just about the guide dogs. The association provides loads of support, psychosocial support. It's not just the dogs. I was gobsmacked. And yeah,
see, I didn't know that either.
I'm not following her on social media, so there you go. Yep.
Me too. Did you see that about how somebody parked yesterday and how did you see that on her social media?
I'm not on social media as much as I would like because I have a life and I'm not there all the time. That said, guys, follow us on social media. We're on Facebook. We're all over the place. And of course, you can comment and hit the button and subscribe as well. But no, I think this is the thing. There's place for lots of different events. Of course, there is. But I really do think that you've got to experience the Rise4Disability events. I'm not saying that just because Jade's here. I think it fulfills a different part of the market. And if you want real interactive content that's been developed around your community and what are your needs, then I think you need to be looking at these events. I really do.
So I guess that brings us on to closing now. I guess we've got one more product that I suppose you had another interview with our friends at Mobility in Motion, and
Indeed, we did promise you that there'd be another review of Mobility in Motion. And again, this is something which fascinated me because often if someone is requiring hoisting, then the go-to solution for vehicles is wheelchair accessible vehicles. Nothing against wheelchair accessible vehicles. I promise you I haven't. I think they've got a very good role to fulfill. But if you're wanting something slightly different, then there is a way of being transferred in and out of a vehicle safely, even if your transfer method is via hoisting. So over at Milton Keynes, this time indoors, I had a look at this particular piece of kit. I'm going to say no more. You guys just sit back, watch, listen, see what you think, and put your comments down below. Be really good to hear from you. Sit back, enjoy Mobility in Motion.
I'm Justin from Mobility in Motion, and today we're exhibiting at Rise4Disability in Milton Keynes.
So as you know, at the last Rise event, we had Mobility in Motion that came along. There was a brilliant demonstration of Ria and with Jade about how it all worked, but I didn't get to see it. So I've come along today and I wanted to find out from you guys directly how some of this equipment works. I understand, for example, that you have a piece of equipment for lifting someone, hoisting someone from wheelchair into a standard car chair.
Absolutely.
No way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, so my name's Mike, lovely to see you.
I'm Justin from Mobility in Motion.
Justin, good to see you.
Yeah.
So Justin, talk me through how this product's going to work and maybe we can see it in action?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
So this is the Auto Chair Milford Person Lift. This is it in kit form, ready to use. So we've got the lift arm and then we've got two little attachments that once put together will allow us to lift our lovely candidate here, Casper, who's willingly
Casper, lovely to see you. I'm Mike, okay?
offered himself
Lovely
up.
to
There we
see
go.
you. So I'm an occupational therapist. I've been qualified since 1991, worked all over the shop. But one of the things I get from people I work with is, well, if you're a wheelchair user, all can have is a wheelchair accessible vehicle. Not everyone wants that.
No, absolutely, no.
So how is this going to work?
So this is like a miniature hoist. So all we need to do in the car is fit a little post down in the footwell. We can do 23.5 stone in weight on this arm once fully assembled. And what this provides is a complete transfer solution. So we will be able to use this little sling and the arm to transfer Casper in a moment from the chair onto the car seat.
Okay, so do we have to assemble this and disassemble it every time you use it?
Ideally, yes. Yeah, there's a few tricks to speed up the process, but in honesty, get it right, it's a couple of minutes.
Right, let's see you in action. How does it work?
Yes. So the arm itself, now this is about 8 kilos, so there's a little bit of a lump to this. Very much make sure when we do our assessments that somebody can lift and handle this. So you've got two little holes here. You can see two little lugs on the post there. See what's going to happen here. So to attach the arm, the lower stump's slightly taller than the top one, so we just find that, rock the top one into place and drop it in. We've then got a little kettle plug. The plug point is always accessible. So you plug it in and then you'd switch it on with the little switch on top.
So that is very much like the way you attach a foot plate onto a wheelchair, in fairness. It's lining up the relevant holes, putting it on, plugging it in.
Exactly.
Okay, looks quite easy so far.
Exactly. So we've got two more pieces here. So we've got what we know as an extension bar and then the spreader bar. This is the one the sling will connect to in a moment.
Right.
So again, can't get it wrong, everything only fits in the right place. So this one here just slots down into the bar and this one here connects to there.
Okay, so what actually stops this all falling apart? Because I understand gravity's helping, but is there anything else to help with that?
So nothing locks in place, but unless you were lifting it, which you would never do in this scenario, it should never
because it
come
will
out.
always be the weight and gravity keeping it secure.
Yes. So you never travel, as you rightly pointed out, you never travel with this in place. And that is one of the main reasons. So although you can rest it assembled on the car seat there.
I can imagine if you're in an accident, that's going to get in the way of the airbag and everything else.
You'd never have it in place, exactly.
Which is an interesting point. Is this approved by all car manufacturers?
As Auto Chair, we are manufacturer approved installers. So, yes.
So it complies with all relevant regulations?
Absolutely. Yes. Okay. Yeah. All we're simply doing to make this fit is fitting a little post which bolts straight to the chassis at the bottom, and then you've got two little strut supports that go underneath the dashboard. And that is all it takes to install it.
And you'll do that?
We do, yeah. We have our own accredited installers that come and do that. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
Okay.
So, we can borrow Casper.
Thank you so much for volunteering and being our client.
The sling.
Yeah.
So we have a full range of these in lots of different shapes and sizes. They range from extra small all the way up to extra large. As I say, the arm can do 23.5 stone, so it's incredibly strong.
Right.
The slings are specially designed to work with the person lift.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
So who would actually assess the sling and check we've got the correct size?
So that's where I come in. I do that. So I'm one of the assessment team.
Okay.
So yeah, that's something we very much assess for when we do our home demonstrations.
Okay.
So as I say, these are specifically designed for the person lift. So as you can see by the shape of it, it's known to us as a wraparound sling. So as we'll demonstrate in a moment, we can put this on without Casper having to stand up. That is a big problem, as I'm sure you've come across in your profession.
And I guess that sort of defeats the object. If you can stand,
exactly.
You've got other products.
You're probably going to get in the car, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap that around Casper in just a second.
Yep.
What we aim for, again, when I do my assessments, we always aim to perfect the strap lengths. So this is going to lift Casper in a comfortable and upright seated position.
Yep.
Which again, unlike a lot of domestic hoists that you end up being a little bit more hammock-like when you're lifted,
yes.
This will lift him nice and upright. And as I say, we have quite short arm straps, quite long leg straps, and you're nice and upright. So
okay,
nice
that's
and
fantastic.
So to put this on, what we need is to put the brakes on first before we do anything.
Indeed. Well, you can do that for yourself.
You can do it.
There you go. Right.
There we go. And then, again, sometimes people need assistance with this, but with Casper seated here, what I need him to do is just lean forward as much as he can. So a little bit more, that'll be ideal. And what I'm going to do is going to drop this down to the base of the seat, just down behind him.
So it sounds very much like the way we attach a traditional universal style sling. You
Yes.
put it down to the base of the
That's
seat.
exactly that.
Just down to the coccyx.
Yep, that's it.
And then just
Drop it
maybe
down
fold it
and then-
slightly under. Okay.
Yeah,
Good,
yeah,
good,
that's
good.
it. So what we're going to do is just come around each side of him. Just going to give the sling a little pull,
Yep.
just to settle it down the side, like so. And then what we're going to do is just bring these straps just underneath the knee, just assist them as they come underneath. Just trying to make sure that the material's not folded. When we're doing that, we just want to make sure that we can see the sling underneath his legs, so we're not lifting on just the straps.
So again, this will be familiar to anybody who does the standard moving and handling technique of hoisting.
Yeah.
This is just a standard.
Yeah.
System.
A lot of healthcare professionals get involved when we're doing our demos.
Yeah.
And often they'll just take over and do it for us, because they're so used to them.
Okay.
Again,
Yeah.
this one here, just pull it the other way. I'm just going to bring that underneath.
Yep.
Lay that on the knees, ready to go.
Okay.
So we're all good. So what I will do, grab the arm here. So I've just lowered it down. What we'd do is we'll bring Casper in to about there. There we go, pop brakes on. Then we don't have to worry about the chair anymore.
Right.
So to attach, what we're going to do is grab the two leg straps.
Yes.
And we're going to connect these into the middle here. So notice I'm just sort of taking leg weight a little bit now. The ideal setup is to just be taking up the slack in the sling as you're attaching it.
Okay.
That way when we start to lift, the spreader bar is not going to be up in his face.
Okay.
So from my perspective here, I try and do the furthest arm strap next and bring this one to meet the sling. Now we've done that one, it's a little bit easier to attach this one, because all I need to do is lever the two together. There we go.
So do you, as the person being hoisted, do you need to have a reasonable amount of trunk control, or can we work around that as well? If someone has poor trunk control.
It's designed with the person being lifted having no mobility at all.
Right.
We do a head support sling. So if upper body, there's a few tricks we can do, but if upper body is quite limp, then or neck flex, if you're quite limp, then we do have a head support sling which has a boning structure to it. They're a little bit less comfortable for travelling in, so we'll probably come up with some plans for maybe taking it off, putting it back on.
Okay, but there's options.
Yeah, there's options for that. Again, amputee slings as well. We do a range of those as well.
Okay.
We've got mesh, we've got fleece lined. There's loads of options that we can go through with people.
I'm sorry, I'm sticking my head through the window. There is no window here in case anyone's wondering about health and safety, but how does it feel for you so far? What's the experience like?
Comfortable, yeah, pretty much the same, yeah.
Okay.
I still feel like I'm seated on a chair, yeah.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
So what happens now then?
So what we do is grab the little handset.
Yep.
Now I like to just hover my hand over the handle on the top of the sling.
Yep.
And as you can see with the handset, there's just two buttons on that, up and down, nice and easy. So the guiding in and out of the car is down to us to perfect. So this is purely doing the raising and lowering, and it's doing the hard work for
You see,
us,
I'm afraid my reference is back to James Bond movies, and I'm so tempted to press the red
button
button so that it shoots you through the roof of the car, but maybe I'm wrong.
We could try. So what I'm going to do, just push and hold the up button, just hovering my hand over the handle on the sling, just so I can get a feel for when Casper is elevated.
Yep.
We've left the brakes on the chair, so as we start to lift, we don't have to worry about the chair disappearing down the street behind us.
Okay. Yep. And again, this mirrors the hoisting that you'd expect to happen with any other type of hoist, ceiling track hoist, mobile hoist, whatever is involved.
Yeah. So I'm not hearing any screams, so I'm going to take the assumption it's reasonably comfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm going to fully elevate at this stage. Now, when I do my assessments, I just elevate fully and then look to lower down into the car.
Okay.
Obviously, we can see Casper is nice and tall, so he's going to be looking over the car to start with, but that's fine. So what I'll do is drag the chair out the way, leaving the brakes on. Again, because I'm operating everything here, if we were on a hill or a slope, we don't have to worry about that disappearing down the road. Chair's going to stay put and we can concentrate on getting Casper in the car.
Okay.
So there's two little handles on the sides of the sling. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to keep an eye on Casper's legs. Now, this could be where I'd have to assist getting feet over the door sill to start with.
Yeah.
In this scenario, Casper is able to just sort of walk through. So I'm going to give a little push towards the dashboard and just guide Casper in through the gap. There we go. Until his knees won't allow me to go in any further. So what you'll see now, obviously, we're a bit too tall. So the trick for this, again, might not suit everybody with this car, but in this scenario, if Casper could lean away from the car, what we'll find is I can actually get him in onto the car seat and then gently lower him down until he could roll his head in and under. There we go, and we're on the car seat. So what we do now is just press the down button until everything's slack and just release this. And obviously this, at this point, gets removed. Now, if you are in a bit of a hurry, you can lift it off as one, but just be mindful this would swing.
It's additional weight as well, isn't
Absolutely.
it? So you need to be mindful of that.
So obviously we do advise that you just take it apart. So you've got each piece there. Now we do give a big bag for everything to go into. And then we're going off for a drive, so we'll unplug it.
Okay.
And take it out.
So the sling stays underneath the occupant, yeah?
Yes,
the sling stays underneath?
Yeah, so we normally just tuck the buckles out the way and then just travelling, ideally.
And that's the bit which might give a little bit of controversy, because normally when we hoist somebody, the debate everyone has is, do you keep the sling underneath the individual, or do you take it out the way? Now there's research going on at the moment which is challenging some long-held beliefs, because the general belief is leaving that sling underneath causes a pressure point.
Okay.
But there's research being challenged about that, so that may change. The important thing is user experience.
Yes.
How long has this product been available and what's been user feedback on it?
I mean, this has been around since 1989.
Right.
It's actually incredibly popular.
There's a lot of users of this.
Yes, I mean, I've been doing this over 5 years now. I've never heard any feedback through the company to say somebody's been uncomfortable travelling in a car seat.
But presumably the advice would be, if you've got concerns about skin integrity, monitor it, start with some short journeys,
absolutely,
build it up. Okay.
Absolutely, yep. Obviously there's adjustments in your car seats as well, because you are in your standard car seat, so you might be able to do some pressure relieving things there as well.
Absolutely. And again, it's all down, and this is the phrase everyone loves to use, it's called an individual risk assessment, and which is why you come out, you assess.
Absolutely.
It's different vehicles, different people, and works well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the $1 million question, if somebody feels this could be a benefit to them, or maybe an occupational therapist out there thinks they've got a client who'll benefit from this, what do they do? How do they find out more?
So they can contact us, Mobility in Motion.
Right.
Obviously they can come and see us at the further future Rise events as well.
Yes, of which I think the next one is up in Scotland, in Glasgow.
Correct.
If you want to travel up.
Yes.
You're going to be there?
Yes.
So
I personally won't, but we will be there. Yeah.
Okay, you'll be there as a company.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we'll be exhibiting there, so they can always come and try it.
And what about the funding of it?
Funding, so again, everything we do is available on the Motability scheme if they've got a Motability car. Heavily subsidised. They do have the grants team as well, which sometimes fund it completely. If not, we can supply these as a retail price with a retail customer. Prices are around $2,995. That's fully fitted. You get a 3-year guarantee.
Okay.
And majority are fitted as a mobile install as well, so we don't have to have the car moved.
And what about the assessment itself? I mean, are you able to come out virtually anywhere? Or what?
We cover the whole country. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we'll go wherever we can park.
Okay.
Fair
enough.
It's all good. Yeah, we'll come to you, and that's a free assessment as well. No obligation.
Assessment, no obligation. So even if we turned away and said it's not for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Then it's not right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I have to point out, guys, that this isn't the only products available. There's a whole range of products available from this company. They're very much driven by the end user. I hate that phrase, but the person who's going to use the devices at the end of the day. And I've got to say, I've really enjoyed it. So it's only one thing left to say to you now. That is, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Put your seatbelt on, mate. We're off to the pub. So, as you can see, that's just today in this podcast, we've seen a couple of ways getting in and out of vehicles. There's many, many more. Jade herself, as you were saying earlier, Jade, you've found things that could help your personal situation as well. And of course, mobility in motion, they're not just about the equipment, they're about the funding as well. Do you know there's another Rise event cropping up in 2025? Really? Yeah. Next one's on the 13th of February over at the Stadium of Light in Sunderland. And I certainly intend to be there.
Sorry to interrupt. I'd love it to be at the stadium, but it's the Beacon of Light, which is the sistering charity company next door. But the Beacon of Light, they run a charity side of it. So they do a lot around disability, sports and inclusion. So we're in partnership with the Beacon of Light, the Bowl.
So please make sure you go to the right place, folks. Otherwise, it might get very confusing. Talking about 2025, at the time of recording, this is our last podcast of 2024. But we are going to be around throughout 2025. And we really want this to be about you guys that are listening. So, Jade, how can people get in touch with the podcast? And how would we like them to feature? I'm guessing, for example, if they've got a book they want to feature.
Yeah, so we have a mailing list that you can join. We will put a link to that on the description below. Follow us on socials, and you can also email us. The email address will be below. I'm pretty sure it's positivetalkspodcast@gmail.com. Yeah,
just have
whatever Gmail is below.
They'll be there. The thing is, folks, Jade and I, and if you want to know our backgrounds, go all the way back to the first episode. It's there on YouTube. It'll tell you all about us. But we are passionate about occupational therapy and about the varied things that OTs do. We're passionate about the fact that as OTs, we don't know what other OTs do. We're passionate about the fact there's some brilliant equipment out there, some great innovations. But this is not our day job. We do this because we care and because we're enthusiastic. So the more of you that get involved, the better this is going to be. We will love to hear from you. We'd love to feature things that are important to you, because if you've got a good idea, the chances are someone else will think it too. We would love, as a New Year resolution for 2025, Jade, my New Year resolution is I'd love to get these podcasts out on a regular basis.
Yeah, so good one to have. I agree with
that. But until then, just bear with us. They will become more regular, but we love hearing from you. We love you being involved, and we love doing the podcast. So I think looking forward to 2025. Yeah. Keep hitting the button, keep subscribing, spreading the news. Tell them how wonderful Jade is, how clever she is with this idea about Rise4Disability. Tell them how much that you love the fact that OT is being bigged up on these podcasts, and follow us throughout 2025. Jade, are there any concluding comments you wish to make before we wish people a very happy and wonderful, positive Talks 2025?
I think the only thing is I look forward to seeing you hopefully in events in future, in-person events, and also online, and hearing from everyone. And all the best for 2025. And hopefully we get this podcast out on a lot more regular basis and start to get engagement with more OTs and find out more information from different people.
Absolutely. So on that note, keep the positive talks going. Bye, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.